Welcome to Release to Revive. This is where we talk about you and your energy, how to manage your energy physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Welcome back, friends. So we have a beautiful guest today. Jessica is an alternative therapist, and Jessica Reeds will be bringing our wisdom into this conversation. So she's a mentor, a mum of two, and a 6'3" Manny Gen. We will be touching on some human design throughout this chat as well. If you're into human design, wait up for that at the end. And she lives in Canberra, so she's an Australian local. Jessica is also a founder of a holistic healing practice called Inspired Life Collective, and Jessica has a deep understanding of the body and mind connection, which is why I wanted to bring her on today. You guys know how passionate I am about the body-mind connection, and she holds multiple qualifications. Some to mention include advanced EFT practitioner, clinical hypnotherapist, life coach, and a holistic counselor. God, that's a mouthful. Jessica is driven as well by a compelling calling to guide self-led and impact-driven women, which you guys are, I know that you're listening, desiring healing growth and elevation to help you create a profound shift through life and business. Especially if you've been overrun by anxiety or trauma and stress and you want a new state of being. She helps you embrace life with an unwavering confidence after her sessions, gain clarity and alignment. So this is incredible, guys. Her work with EFT and everything, all the chats we have, it's profound with what she knows and her capabilities and what she's able to share with us. I even dug into some of her personal practices, which we'll get to at the end. So stick around for that. If you're a journaler, you're going to love it. So let's get ready to listen to some of her combined innate inner wisdom and awareness, intuitive knowledge as well, plus her clinical expertise. And I must say, guys, just being around Jessica, she has the most nurturing energy. She has this innate ability to create an environment where you feel instantly safe. She's just got this warmness about her, and you'll hear it through this. So sit back and enjoy. Welcome, Jessica Reeds.
Thanks, Jackie. I'm so excited to be here today.
We have some really cool stuff we're going to talk about. I just know it, knowing you and how deep you go with everything that we've spoken about off camera too.
Thank you.
Yeah, you just have that. She holds that energy, guys, or holds the energy of, the safe space that you want of healing. And I feel like, yeah, you've got that warm heart. So let's dive deep today, I reckon.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that you can feel that from me, because that is something that I really do pride myself on within my practice is being able to hold that really safe space for that deep work. And, because that's something that can get scary and uncomfortable. And let's be honest, we weren't really all taught growing up that it was safe to feel things. So having a safe space to explore, what's uncomfortable in your body and even start to process and release that, it's really important. So thank you. Thank you.
And I feel like even though when you start to hang around these kind of people, I'd say, like the people that are listening to this, you understand that it becomes more of your norm, I guess. But outside of that, it still is very not a lot of people can hold that space at all, and they kind of brush it off, or like, are you okay is kind of short-lived sometimes, I find.
Absolutely.
Which is unfortunate, but yeah.
It's often a polite question, but for so many people, and I love that there is so much more education now and so much more awareness about emotional regulation, about the nervous system, about emotional intelligence, about trauma and what that looks like and how that manifests also in our adult lives. If it was, say, from childhood, people aren't maybe just being cranky, maybe they're in a fight or flight response for their whole life, but there's so much more education and awareness. But I do still feel like for a good portion of society, it's, are you okay, is a polite question to ask, but they are uncomfortable with holding anything other than, yeah, I'm fine. In my experience. So
which is, I think, what we're going to dive into today as well. So if you find yourself Because for anyone that's also a healer or any like that kind of space, you need to be able to, in my point of view anyway, just briefly, like you need to be able to see that side of you and hold that space for yourself. What would you say to that
Yeah,
too? Like you need to
absolutely.
hold that space for yourself to be able to hold it for someone else.
I could
Yeah.
not agree more.
Yeah.
A large portion of the women that I work with are coaches and healers and
Mm.
service-based businesses. So people working with people working with energy. Um, we all work with energy, whether we realize that or
Yeah.
not. Obviously, being
Yeah.
energetic beings,
Good
but
point.
in a traditional sense, people who are constantly in the energy of other people. And I experienced it myself, and I see it with the ladies that I work with. If we can't clear out what is energetically heavy for us, if we can't clear out subconscious beliefs, then I think we might talk a little bit more about the nervous system. So I won't go too deep into
Yeah.
that now. But
Yeah.
if we can't clear out subconscious beliefs that live in our body and things that have formed an emotional association over the years, in our early childhood in particular, when we sort of get that grasp on how we navigate our world. If we can't, I guess, become aware of where that is limiting us, then we are only going to be inviting into our own healing spaces a mirror of where we're limited to, which means we're only
Mm.
going to be able to be taking our clients to a certain level. And that's why I love the women who come into my world, because they are just on this continual growth journey. We're
Yeah.
never fully healed. It's not like, oh, I've dealt with that trauma and now I'm done for life. Or,
Yeah.
that's not
Yeah.
reality. I dealt with a subconscious belief and now I'm healed. No.
Yeah.
It's an evolution and it's a journey. And at every next edge of expansion that we get to, we will have a new limit come up. We will have
Yeah.
something where our nervous system is saying, this isn't my normal. This isn't what I know to be safe. This isn't what I know to be true.
Mm-hmm.
And I talk about that as not being an energetic match for what you want to call into the world. So that's
Mm.
where your body, which is where your subconscious mind resides, that's where your body does not align, and your energy as well, because remembering that emotions are energy in motion, that's where they do not align with what you consciously desire. And
Yeah.
so in the capacity to hold space, I know, as I mentioned, ladies that I work with, but I found in my own journey too, that the deeper I healed and the more I let my ego go and the more that I allowed myself to really step into my next levels,
Mm.
that reflected in terms of who I worked with, that reflected in terms of the depth of space that I was able to hold, and that was just delivered to me. It is so energetic. The universe knows when you are ready to hold your next level.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of that classic saying, like when the student's ready, the teacher appears, right? That's how it works.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I guess those people that you're attracting to you are also somehow stumbling across you, like it's all connecting,
Yeah,
like magnetizing towards each other.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, I'm also a very big believer in timing as well, and that you will never be brought a situation that you don't have the capacity to hold space for. And so that's why, again, the more internal healing and clearing that you can do, and the more you can
Mm.
keep your energy clean, and the more that you can feel and process and deal with the real life things as they come up, rather than suppressing, learning how to regulate your nervous system, practicing self-awareness so you can be
Mm-hmm.
aware when you're not in a regulated state.
Yeah.
And working, then meeting yourself where you're at in terms of, am I feeling good today? Am I actually coming from a sympathetic state? Am I actually spending a few days down in a dorsal ventral state, which is that lower energy, that's, I guess that's where like depression lives, that's where a freeze response lives, that's that lower
Mm.
energy. But having that self-awareness to be able to check in and meet yourself where you're at is going to be a really big part of all of that as well.
Yeah. Let's segue from that actually, because I love that you have that as like a continuing message on all your content too that you're putting out there, that it's not like you don't arrive, like it's like it's a continuous
I'm
healing
healed.
journey. Yeah, exactly. But even for you guys that are listening, like you're on a growing path. You're women that want to lead. You're passionate and you're wanting to expand yourself. So like for people that are reaching for those newer heights, how would you describe or say, like, because there is that buzzword at the moment, I find it's a bit of a buzzword, regulating your nervous system. Um, but from your take, like, what's the importance of it, is my question. And also, how would we go about it best in a brief overview? I know there's a lot to it.
Yeah. Look, it is very, very, very in depth, but I think what is really key to understand when you're on any kind of growth journey is you don't have to fully understand even how the nervous system works and, you know, all of the ins and outs of everything. But what is really important to understand is that when you start to move out of what is familiar for you. So let's say, and even if what is familiar is not comfortable, let's say you've been living in a state of anxiety for a long period of time, or you've been living in a high stress environment, or you've been going to a job that you desperately want to leave because you've got a business that you want to start, but you are so used to living in the emotional state that that job keeps you in. Stepping out of what you know to be safe and what you know to be true and what your nervous system knows is safe, and what it knows is safe is what's been repeated. So when you go to step out into, I call it your next edge of expansion, you know, you're on that brink. Do I leave the job? I really want to not feel anxious anymore. You know, when you're on that brink of that next step for yourself, it is really, really important to know that your body will probably work against you for a little while, because it's going to be wanting to pull you back into what it knows to be safe, which again is what's been repeated for you. And so just being aware of that, even just having that awareness that, you know, I hear so many times people say, oh, I guess that they get to their glass ceiling, or they get to that upper limit, or they repeat this self-sabotaging behavior. And so much of what we find safety in is also coming from the beliefs, the subconscious and the unconscious mind, and the beliefs that we have learned really in those early formative years, really in that sort of when we're operating from that theta brainwave state from around 0 to sort of up to 7, where basically we're not thinking from a logical thinking brain, we are operating from emotions as our primary language. Yeah. And so everything is, how does this make me feel? And then a child will then go and put their own meaning and their own conclusion to how they feel based on the situation. And that then forms these beliefs about the world and how you navigate your space in the world and how you find your space in your family. And for some people that might be that, you know, if mum and dad are under a high stress situation and it's constantly I don't know, being told that you won't be played with, for example, you might go on and put a belief there or a conclusion that it's actually your fault and you're irritating, or that you've got to stay quiet to be, you know, to be safe, that's how you found your place in the world, for example, staying quiet. And so you can see then as you get older and these beliefs are no longer serving you, you are consciously wanting to step out of, you know, out into something new, out of being an anxious person, out of living in a trauma response, out of, you know, the job again, you know, whatever it is, anything, any new change. And your nervous system goes, this is what we believe to be safe.
Yeah.
And so then it's going to come back. And so that's one aspect. That is one huge aspect in terms of how your nervous system is going to come into play when you are looking to make changes, remembering that we are just wired for survival. That is the whole, you know, the autonomic nervous system, when it goes into that sympathetic and you have that fight or flight response, it is literally just this primitive need for survival. But what we forget, or what we sort of don't, some people aren't even aware of, particularly if we've been living in high stress and high anxiety situations, or again, long-term trauma responses, we don't really remember that or think of the fact that our thoughts the things that we're thinking are enough to cause a response in your nervous system.
Yeah.
So there is a pathway that anxiety and stress response can take that comes in through your senses, and you cognitively process what you've brought in. And perhaps you have a negative thought pattern about that. And then it sends it straight up to your amygdala saying, actually, danger, danger, danger. But that might be over an email, or it might be over a bill. It's not actually a life-threatening situation, but your body is still going to be responding as if it is a life-threatening situation.
Can I jump in here? Because I know that you probably deal with a whole spectrum of like people's trauma, and let's say I know that you dealt with a very high end like anxiety. You had that very strongly, didn't you, at one point? Yeah. Whereas for me, I don't feel like I can relate to that. So then I just want to say here as well, because I feel like it shows up for me in procrastination, for example. So can you speak to that? Because like when you were saying, like, let's say I'm reading that email that you're giving an example for, and something's triggered by that email, and then I'm just like, I'm just going to go get a snack instead of actually just replying to it and getting the job done. You know what I mean? And my body is still responding in a way that's like, oh, I don't want to do this right now because of some thing that's triggered.
But obviously I mentioned anxiety, but procrastination, imposter syndrome, self-sabotage, these are all signs that you are potentially operating from a dysregulated nervous system.
Yeah.
And what happens and brain fog, when you sit down and you're like, I've just got this 1 hour to get all my stuff done, or I think you're working in nap times at the moment, aren't you? I did that. That was me in 2020 and 2021, working in nap times. And it's like, oh, I've just got this hour and I've got all this stuff that I need to get done. And for me, I'd be sitting down with this 1 hour being like, no, the to-do list is huge. And I've got to push this out. And I've got such limited time that I'm sitting down in a dysregulated state, which means I'm coming in from a stress response, which means that my logical thinking brain has actually left the building. And so I'm functioning from an emotional brain that can't really, cognitively process that 10 plus 10 is 20, because you don't need to do maths if you're being chased by a tiger. But again, we haven't been caught up with our modern stressors. And so that would have then made me unproductive. And it made me do things like sit down and procrastinate. And feel discomfort in my body and feel like I can't think clearly, and then start 10 different tabs or 10 job. Oh no, and then an email pops up and then a notification, and then suddenly I'm 5 minutes into 10 different jobs, and my daughter would wake up, So coming in, I teach my clients this, and I have a whole podcast episode on it as well, talking about coming into work. I think it might be under one of the managing your energy ones, but one of the key things that I do with no matter what time frame I have to work, and I've got a bit more now. My daughter is in preschool next year, my youngest. So my days, my business, my days has evolved with her growth, which has been really beautiful. But I will sit down and I will check in and make sure that I am calm and regulated. And so whether that be through some tapping, or whether that be through some breathing, or whether that be through sitting with my feet in the grass in my front yard just for 5 minutes, making sure that I'm not coming in a space of stress, that is going to make me more productive than me coming in, like taking that 5 to 10 minutes. And I think we're because we're so time focused, it's like, oh, 10 minutes, I can't spare 10 minutes. Well, guess what? You're going to procrastinate. You're going to not be thinking clearly. You're not going to be showing up at your best if you are trying to operate from that. So you're much better off to pause, to find your favorite way to regulate. And there's so many ways to explore to do that. I mentioned before, one of my favorites is tapping. I find it really fast, really effective. It's one of my favorite modalities to use for all sorts of things. But you're much better off to actually intentionally slow down to speed up. To take that time to calm your brain, to get your logical thinking brain back on board, And once you've done that, then tackle your tasks.
Yeah.
And that's going to take a lot to do. So at first, it feels really uncomfortable to do that. And that just comes down to societal conditioning, really. That busy is a badge of honor. And we operate from that space of, of go, go, go. And so if you want to consciously change that, know that you are allowed to. You can operate your day and your energy however you want to. It doesn't have to be the way that we have been, the way that we've been conditioned to believe is the normal way to work.
I'm just sitting here nodding like, yes. I in my own life too, like there's another example. I remember being like in low end, not low end, but like starter jobs, I'm gonna say. I remember feeling guilty when I would take a break, and I feel like that's where that has also stemmed from. But then also taking a few steps back to something you said earlier, when you were saying when we want to expand and grow, I'm reading a book currently, which is super inspiring. 10x is easier than 2x by Dan Sullivan, I believe.
Okay.
And
I've read it. I have to.
yeah, it was super good read. But I'm just throwing that in there because the concept is that you know that 80-20 rule? Have you heard of that? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. For those that haven't heard of it, just briefly, 80% of like profits or even productivity usually comes from 20% of your actions, for example, really briefly, but that's pretty much their concept. So then in his book, you lean into the 20% that are giving you the most bang for your buck, I guess. And then making that majority of your time. So then that way you're essentially 10xing a lot easier because you're asking the difficult questions. So then even just that, and I'm still early days of my business, but even just like thinking about, I should probably hire an assistant to do like the little admin tasks to save myself time to then have more time for the things that my strengths are good for. Even that sometimes just makes me go, oh, like thinking about that now like this lately. And I find like, regulating your nervous system would be so powerful for just those little things where you're not really ready to let go of like that control. Absolutely. And trusting others, right?
Yes. Control and trust they often just come from a space of fear and a space of, and for some people, control comes down to, they believe at some level that they're safer to control their environment than to not. And so letting go of things is hard. So regulation is absolutely so important in that sort of space. And I just want to quickly also, I'll circle back just very briefly, just so I can be really clear as well. Your nervous system does not have to have experienced trauma or big traumas or things that you would maybe even associate as big T traumas. Or even little T traumas. Your nervous system doesn't have to have experienced that for you to be living in a stress response, for you to have formed beliefs from your childhood experiences that no longer serve you. For example, if you watched your parents work themselves to the bone, yet constantly be chasing their tails for money, then you could potentially grow up wondering why it's so hard for you to not feel guilty for taking that break. That's just an example of two things that could possibly connect together. And so it's an invitation to look at, where am I limiting myself? Where am I not feeling aligned? Where are my thoughts and my desires not congruent with what's actually showing up in my life? And then it's an invitation to go deeper into, well, why would I be having this physiological response? But, I love that you're talking about getting into the stretchy things, that stepping out into that next space. I hired a VA. I sat in this space for ages where I was wasting so much of my time on admin that it had to be done, but it wasn't my zone of genius and it didn't light me up, and I procrastinated. It stressed me out. I overthought it. And I had this story that I couldn't afford it because my business was so new. But then I realized that in order for me to be doing this admin work, I was putting my daughter into an additional day of daycare casually every week or two. And that casual day for me wasn't subsidized. So it was $170 a day. And I didn't blink twice at that because I was like, oh, yeah, we pay for daycare. But then I went, oh my goodness, okay, let's have a conversation with that beautiful VA. I've got a unicorn VA, by the way, let me just say. If you want her details, I'll share them with you afterwards. But as you know, let's have a conversation with, I already knew who I wanted to hire and just see what her rates are. And so I hired her for this. I decided that I could afford the same amount as what I was paying the daycare. So I pulled back on the daycare. I got to keep Amelia home with me that extra day at that point. And this woman was doing what was taking me all day in 3 hours plus more because I hired her in her zone of genius. And so in terms of business, when you're looking at that 80-20 and you're looking at your energy management as well, as soon as you can start to direct your energy and your focus into the things that light you up, the things that are going to be income producing, and you can let go of and become comfortable with, because I know also, we've got our businesses and we love them and we've spent so much time and passion. And, it is hard sometimes the thought of letting go of tasks because would someone do them as well as me? But guess what? I had that thought knowing all too well that I did not do those things very well.
Yeah.
And for me, I was so lucky with my first hire that I very intentionally hired someone who had very aligned energy. Energy is everything to me, and it was very important when I was looking at that. But I was so lucky that with my first hire that I was able to squash that story very quickly, because she very quickly proved to me that she can do it better. Mm-hmm. And the clearer my instructions were, the clearer. I've got this beautiful brand foundations 35-page documents, that goes through my brand voice, that goes through my tone, my keywords, all those things that are so foundational to do even before logos and things like that. You want to get your brand foundations done. I could hand that to her and she could just completely understand my business.
Yeah.
And so the clearer I realized too, that it's not just, from my perspective, it was like learning how to clearly communicate my tasks. The more specific I was, the clearer I was, the better results I have. A little bit like when you're asking ChatGPT to write something for you.
Yeah.
The more specific you are and the better instructions you give as a leader, the better results that you're going to get too. So it's a really beautiful invitation. I feel any next stretchy step like that. Oh, should I hire a VA or should I pay someone to build that Facebook page, that website page for me? Or, I love outsourcing. It just, my first thought is, can I outsource now?
Yeah. The automation's queen, right?
I love automation. I automate my vacuuming. I automate email sequences, everything I can automate that doesn't design. But it's all about, for me, it's about energy management.
Yeah.
It is completely about energy management, which again is looking after your nervous system. Because if I was putting my time and energy and constantly stepping myself into potential burnout, working more hours than I needed to, because it took me a long time to realize that I had taken the same conditioning from my public service role, the 10+ hour days, the taking the phone home with me, the accepting more work than I should have, the not taking a break. It took me a while to realize I'd taken that same conditioning into my own business. The trying to push through when you're sick, all those things. That took me a while to unlearn how to do. But you're looking after your nervous system when you're managing your energy, because if you are constantly operating from a sympathetic state, so a stress response state, which really we're kind of entering most of the time that we leave the present moment to a certain extent. But if you're constantly functioning from that and you think about it from a physiological perspective, and I know you'll be well aware of this, but the changes that happen in your body when you step into that sympathetic nervous system state where your digestive system doesn't function correctly, your blood flow is not going into all of the areas that it needs to, so it can prioritize fight or flight. We've got excess cortisol, which is being turned into glucose into our muscles, which is then being turned into excess fat if we don't need the glucose in our muscles. If you think about, and the excess adrenaline and the long-term impacts that this long-term stress response has on the body, managing your energy, managing your nervous system, all those things, it's all intertwined. I talk about that. They're not
which is why we connected, because that's what we're all about here as well.
They're not separate, are they? So no. I'm very much now energy first, and if that means outsourcing.
Yeah. Is that what you would also say? Because I know one of the questions I wanted to ask you, like, what would you say to the Jess a few years ago that wanted to live the life that you're living right now? Like, I know you've got new big goals now as well, new dreams.
Oh, absolutely. They evolve. I was actually just drafting a Instagram post about something like this today, but
cool.
Your dreams evolve.
Yeah.
And also, oh man, so much advice. I don't even know where I would start. Automate. Exactly. Automate everything. Well, there's a couple of things to me. The first major lesson that I really come back to last year when I started to have massive shifts in my business was to learn to enjoy the journey. Because what I was doing early last year was I was projecting myself into a space where I wasn't yet. And yes, that's a goal. It was, it was a vision. But I was also so frustrated that I wasn't there yet, and not being realistic about where I was in terms of, I had a relatively new business. So I started my business in March 2021. So beginning of last year, it was a very new business, just 12 months old. So why wasn't I earning this? Why wasn't I achieving this? Why wasn't I attracting this? I wasn't an internal match yet.
Yeah.
And I was in a counseling class last year. So I did a diploma in clinical hypnotherapy last year while I was building my business as well. And one of the modules that we did was year 1 of Gestalt. And our teacher said to us, our teacher was talking about a friend of hers who was meeting her business with so much resistance because she couldn't accept where she was. And that just resonated with me. And from that moment on, I would come into my room every day, into my office space, and I would be like, right, this is where I am today. That I have just one client today, and that's okay, because this is where I am on my journey. And when I stopped meeting my business with resistance, I was able to then move into flow. Moving into flow then led me into teaching myself how to live more in trust and how to operate more from trust. And then that led me into this whole deeper level of healing that I didn't even see coming, but it happened. And so I guess, enjoy the journey. But then as I look back on things, I would also tell myself that it's perfectly okay to pivot as well. So we were just talking about that, but that is something I would absolutely share with myself a few years ago, because I think also too, I don't know if it comes from like the societal programming again, but it's like, I didn't go to university, but it's that whole, you start something, you get this job, maybe you go to uni for it, and then that's where you are. And then it's hard to sort of move. Or you start a business and you have this offer and this membership and people have joined. My first membership, I put in all the things I thought I should be putting into it.
Yeah.
And I over-delivered, and that drained me. And I stopped being excited to show up. And
Biggie.
I had to scale back. I had to scale it back because I overwhelmed my members as well. It was too much. But then there was this internal like, oh, but you can't pivot. You can't change your mind. Well, it turns out the more I've learned about my human design this year, which has been absolutely changing for me, says that as a manifesting generator, pivoting is essential. And as a line 3, I have to experiment something in order to know whether it is for me or not, and to get the lessons from it too. That is a part of my human design journey.
Yeah, I'm a line 3 too.
Oh, so you get it. Yeah, so you get it. So we can keep making mistakes together and then telling the world what they shouldn't be doing. Because let me tell you, this doesn't work.
This is what Release to Revive was born from too, like having those major goals, but then you kind of, when you dig deeper, you're like, why am I even chasing that? Like sometimes a goal is even not your true
the
goal.
thing that you think you should be doing was
the shoulds,
the shoulds.
Yeah.
That is going to be, so my my mastermind starts on the 2nd of November, and within our welcome call, I'm telling a secret here. Within the welcome call, that's going to be one of the first things that we are going to actually be putting down and breaking energetic and emotional connections to, is what's all the shoulds that you think you should be doing in your business right now, because we're going to get rid of them. Because all the shoulds, and maybe there are some things that would be helpful for your business, but from what I've experienced in working with the mentors that I've worked with over the last 2 years, they do business very differently, and there's no cookie cutter strategies, and there's no one size fits all, and there's obviously there's psychology behind sales, and there are things that underpin things, but ultimately what I thought was going to work for me didn't. What I saw working for other people didn't work. It didn't support me as a manifesting generator. It didn't support me as a mum wearing all those hats in my business and trying to actually scale a business and replace an income and make an impact whilst raising young children and being present for them and making sure that they are nourished and that that they're happy and healthy and that they get me, and it didn't support any of that. And so learning for me to work with my strengths and letting go of my shoulds and the way a membership should look. Well, my memberships now, my mastermind, none of it looks like it should. It doesn't look like typical offers. And I actually love that about myself and my business now, is that there's that beautiful point of difference that's coming from me and the way that I want to be doing business. And maybe that makes me money, and maybe it doesn't. Maybe it works and maybe it doesn't. And if it doesn't, then that's a part of me learning and pivoting, and I'm allowed to pivot. Those would be my main messages, honestly. Those would be my main messages to myself.
And just touching on human design again, like we have the same line in our profiles, but I'm a totally different energy type. So I'm a projector. And the same thing happened to me, like when I was just following others and maybe even copying some leaders on how they're doing things, as you do, trying to like replicate the successful ones.
Then reverse engineer what you think has worked.
Yeah, exactly.
Without realizing that they've actually been trying to build that strategy for 6 years.
Yeah, and it's tailored to them perfectly, but it does not work for your energy. So that is so important. I'm glad you put that in there.
It is so important. I think it's just really, whether you are in business or whether you are working in, traditional job, or whether you're at home with your kids, no matter what you're doing, just knowing that it is just so okay for you to start to look at all the shoulds. I should be earning more money. I should be having these routines in my world. My kids should be doing this. Letting go of your shoulds and just going, okay, well, actually, what's going to work for me? And how do I work best? And when's my energy the highest? I mean, I know you work with energy and you help people regain their energy and work with their energy. So I'm sure your audience has heard you say this. But, when's my optimal time of day? When's my optimal time of the month? Am I going to actually do this launch when I'm menstruating? No, not the best. So learning to actually cultivate your energy, and then there's the energetic perspective of managing your emotions and keeping your meridians flowing, and keeping your auras nice and clean, and although there's all of that. Energy is such a beautiful holistic perspective, and I have believed and I have worked with it in my own world for so many years. And I actually I found, it's so funny. I found this check that I wrote. It's a pretend check. And I made it out to myself for $3 million. And I had completely forgot about it I wrote that in 2000, and when did The Secret come out? 2006, I think, thereabouts.
Yeah.
So I still have this check. I found it a couple of months ago. It was in a box when I moved, and I had it on my bedroom ceiling, and I used to look at it. But I have always been so connected to that energetic. So I was manifesting this money. That was why it was there. But I've always been so connected to this energetic space, but I shied away from it in my business for a little while. I had to get over my internal blocks around being judged, around, I guess, perceptions. I had my own fears, my own stories, my own beliefs. It felt really scary for my nervous system to step into that space.
Yeah.
But since I have, I'm able to show up in my business really authentically and in a way that is so aligned with me, because I am part clinical, part woo-woo, and I love that.
Yes.
I love that. It's
strategy and the woo-woo.
Exactly. It's evidence-based modalities meets woo-woo, and it is brilliant. And so effective. You know, I've had people who've gone to therapy for years and years and years, and I love clinical therapy, don't get me wrong, but I've had people who've gone for the same issue for years and years and years have the biggest shifts after just a few weeks, because they're bringing their body and their energy with somatic practices as well as cognitive practices into their healing journey. It's phenomenal. So I love it. Bit of a rant, but I love it.
Well, like, because you are so prominent in the tapping world too, I just want to add and also share a story to prove the point you mentioned earlier about meeting where you're at, because this is something that I've been doing recently too, and it's game changing, because I think I was as well, like you do when you're a dreamer, you project yourself into this, like, you know, future leaping, future self, up-leveling your self-image. Great, awesome, that's all brilliant. But then you also need to accept where you actually are. And it's so important, because otherwise, which is what another thing that has come clear to me, otherwise all of your messaging that you're sending out there, not even, and to speaking energetics, like that's the most powerful one, even just like what you're creating with words, what you're creating visually on social media, what you're saying to people in person, like all that messaging starts to maybe feel a bit fake if you're not accepting where you are. And I feel like you're always trying to, and that's where the imposter syndrome shows up, because you're trying to like be this person that you're not yet. And then instead of just being honest, and like,
absolutely.
With the human design to really help.
Misalignment, isn't it? It is. It's like there's an internal misalignment, and that's not saying, and that is not saying that we don't try and embody our future selves. Because obviously we can't show up to our goals if we're not doing that. But without that acceptance piece that you just spoke about, it is just so crucial. And I'm sure if you've done any tapping, then you'll know that acceptance is the very first part of a tapping sequence. The reason that we do that, and some people are a little scared to, like, oh, why would I say, even though I have this anxiety, I accept how I feel, or even though I have this imposter syndrome, I accept how I feel, or I love and accept myself anyway, or even though I'm not where I'm at in my business yet, or I screamed at my kids today, or, you know, even though I did something, they don't want to give a voice to what's happened and a voice to the negative. And I think that's toxic positivity has a lot to answer for in that space. But the thing is with acceptance is that we're not saying that, or in particular cases of even things where someone may have harmed us or said something mean or hurt us, even though I've had this thing happen, I accept that it happened. We're not accepting it so that we go, oh, okay, well, that was right. And, you know, and
it's not a standard setting.
We're accepting. Exactly. It's an acceptance to say, accepting something is saying that you have no control over the fact that it's happened. It's already happened. You already feel this way. You've already experienced this thing, and giving it power and giving it power, giving it energy and giving it emotion over something that you have no control over because you can't go back and change it is only going to keep you in a perpetual state of stress, in a perpetual state of trauma, in a perpetual state of negative thought patterns as well, and keep those emotions and keep even like illnesses and injury alive in your body because you have this perpetual state of negativity going on.
Yeah.
So if you can say, I accept this has happened, then you're effectively saying, I no longer give this power anymore. I no longer am going to allow this to control me. And once you can meet something with acceptance, like, like what you would have been doing, like what I did with my business when I wanted to be somewhere that I wasn't, like what I had to do when I was really, really deep in panic disorder. Even though I'm living in panic every day, I still accept that I feel. When I was working through trauma, even though I had this blood clot, even though I had this experience, even though I had this car accident, I accept that this has happened, and I love and accept myself anyway. And so that is just such a key, because until you can accept anything in your life, you can't truly heal and move forward from it.
Yeah.
And that's just fact.
Yeah, it's the acknowledgement piece that's so powerful, isn't it? Yeah.
So powerful.
Yeah. And so the last thing I'm curious about is, because I'm trying to be wary of the time too for you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Because I know you journal. I've seen you do it. Your B-rolls. Yeah, I'm a big journaler myself, so that's why I'm curious. Like what, and again, this can apply like to you guys that are listening. There's certain journaling prompts that I like to encourage people to do depending on their design, but knowing that you're a manifesting generator, like I'm curious what yours are at the moment. Like what do you lean towards to journal through your thoughts?
That's a really good question. I approach journaling, so I have a bank of prompts.
Yeah.
And I have them, so I mentioned my first membership. I actually use the resources myself from my first membership.
Yeah, good.
Open. People are still in there. I'm actually recreating it into an app at the moment. It's a beautiful space. It's got like meditation, self-hypnosis, tappings. It's also got journaling prompts.
That's your line 3. You got to test it out.
Exactly.
And then pass it on.
and now I'm pivoting into it. But so I have a bank of prompts that I will go to if I'm stuck. But my go-to way to journal at the moment is actually to allow myself to just brain dump.
Yeah.
I love just letting go of what I need to let go of. Occasionally I will ask myself, I guess, why something might have shown up for me. So, for example, if I've had a day where a couple of things have just gone wrong, that's an invitation for me to actually go, well, why is this showing up? Because quite often that's a reflection in the way that I'm feeling. And so sometimes I will journal on that sort of thing. But majority of the time I'm brain dumping when I need to brain dump. But then my morning journal is all about what I want to bring into my world. And so I will use my journaling to sit in that space. Well, welcome so-and-so to the Transcendence Mastermind. And I will write that over and over again. I will be, thank you for this thing, regardless of whether I've received it, not or yet. I'm using my journal to create those pathways, and you can do this through visualization. You can do this through so many ways, but the more you can reaffirm it, the better. So you do both, visualize it, write it in your journal, meditate in it. I'm creating those pathways for my brain to know that what I want to be achieving is possible.
Yeah.
And I'm creating the feelings that are associated with it by sitting in that.
Yeah.
So a couple of the prompts they're so simple. What am I grateful for? And what am I grateful for in the current?
Yeah.
And then what am I grateful for in the future? But the future is always worded as now that. So it's never when, it's always now that I have X amount of this, now that I am feeling anxiety free every day, now that I am at my biggest energy levels and my books are booked, my calendar's booked out, and now that so that's always, and I always journal how I feel. So it's not just I have this experience, it's and this makes me feel how I feel. So I'm creating a new reality in my journal. And then I've just recently embodied a really beautiful practice. So basically working on the theory that, I don't know if you've ever read The Power. It was like a sequel to The Secret. And The Power is all about the power of love, which underpins the law of attraction. So if we are not loving something, then it is basically the opposite energy of the law of attraction.
Rejecting
so
it.
recently I have started, and it's okay not to love everything, by the way. It's perfectly okay. You just don't give your energy and your attention to the things that you're not loving. And so I've actually started writing a list every day. I love the sound of the rain on the roof. I love the smell of coffee, even though I don't drink it anymore. I love, foods that I love. I love hearing my children laugh. I love my body. I love money. I'm writing all these things that I love, and it's just keeping me in this amazing frequency.
Yes.
So I very much love journaling for brain dumping so that I can process emotions. I tend to process most of my emotions somatically, but if I'm in the mood to, I will process them through a journal and just dump out everything that I need to. And again, question what might this be meaning for me? What needs my attention right now? What's this about? Just getting curious. They're my biggest prompts, is to get curious. But otherwise, my daily practices are all about creating a frequency of what I want to be feeling through my day and bringing into my world, and feeling what it feels like to hold space for these things, because otherwise you can't really, you need to know what it feels like to have them, and if you don't have them yet, how do you know what it feels like? Well, you've got to create it.
Exactly. And I mean, with your work, like, you would have so many modalities to turn to. Like hypnotherapy, obviously, and the tapping, and you've done the whole holistic coaching too, haven't you? So it's like,
I've done, oh my goodness, if you look at my bio, it's kind of funny. It screams manifesting generator. There's meditation therapy, holistic human development, EFT tapping with life coaching, mind body practitioning, holistic training and assessment.
The list is incredible, honestly.
And clinical hypnotherapy with de-trauma practitioner. And but the thing is, they all just blend so beautifully together. They really do. They all come down to healing internally, so you can make a beautiful external impact and live your life free from your triggers. That's what I believe emotional freedom is. Someone said to me the other day something about healing, and we talked at the very, very beginning about how, it's a linear journey. There's no destination. And I pose this to a lot of my clients, because some of them have maybe like this, they come in with this idea that they need to be healed. And when I actually ask them what that journey, what that destination looks like, they can't answer me, because it's so lineal. And so we have to tap into what they imagine they feel like, so we know when we're getting a gauge into getting close to. But someone said to me something about healing, and I recently had an experience in April that some people would probably look as a setback. I looked at it as just being human. So in April, I had been to a funeral, which I was already very anxious and dissociated about going, because I hadn't been to that place since I buried my best friend last year. And so I didn't want to go to this funeral. I was not in a good place already in my body. And then on the way home, my dad and I were rear-ended. And so my nervous system, I went into a 4-week freeze response. I was not in a good place. And so easy to feel like that could have been a setback, multiple panic attacks, whiplash, migraines, all these awful things that just completely took control. But here's how I know how much healing that I've done. I was able to, first of all, have self-awareness that this was happening. So that I didn't it lasted around 4 weeks, but that's because that's what my body needed to recover, not because I didn't know that it was happening to me.
And
so I was then able to implement tools. I was able to reach out to the right people. I truly believe every coach needs a coach and every coach needs a therapist. I can offer both. But honestly, I reached out to people who I knew could hold that space for me. And that's how I knew how much healing I'd done, because it was my capacity to rebound and come back from, and then take lessons from what I had experienced, that has now propelled me forward even more so. then just sort of sitting in that victim, you know, oh, this happened, and yes, it hurt me. I still have issues with my upper neck, but again, so healing, I guess that's my perspective of healing, is that it's really about how you end up feeling about your triggers, how you are able to navigate life and navigate your challenges, and how much growth there is in that, rather than having an idea that healing means that we just go about our life feeling amazing and never being impacted by being human, which is just not possible.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Like, that was very deep too. It sounds like you've gone through a whole spectrum of things. And I feel like
I have a struggle channel in my human design, and I said who was doing my reading, I was like, oh, well, that explains a lot.
Yeah. But I love how, like, because the way you just framed it, like, it sounds like you have healed being able to talk about it, especially, and just the way that you framed it, like, I see it as being human. Like, even just that is so powerful, because it's acknowledging, like, shit happens, but the way we respond and the way we can kind of process it in our bodies, that's so powerful. And that's the work that you do. So
absolutely,
I think if you've resonated with Jess, I would really recommend reaching out to her. Tell them where they can find you, Jess, because I feel like they need to know where to find you to be able to do this work.
I spend most of my time on Instagram. So I am at jessica.reed.ilc. And so you can find me over there and just pop in my DMs and say hello. You can probably tell I like to talk.
Yeah, no, I love it.
I'll respond with a voice message, because that's just, I much prefer that than typing. So don't be alarmed. That's just me saying hi. But yeah, so you can find me over on Instagram. I do have a website, inspiredlifecollective.com.au, that summarizes all the things. But, you know, I've got a monthly tapping circle, which is a beautiful way to just come in and introduce yourself to a beautiful way to elevate your emotional state. I do work one-on-one with women, and I have the beautiful mastermind for women who are wanting that personal evolution with the energetic strengths-led business side. So that's where you can find me.
Thank you so much, Jess. I've really enjoyed this.
Me too. Thank you for having me.
Oh my goodness. I could just speak to Jessica all day. Like, I think I've made a new friend, guys. She's incredible. She inspires me. And just her knowledge about this mind-body connection, like I said. My main takeaway, I always love to give you a main takeaway or two at the end of my episodes. And my main takeaway from this chat was definitely that journaling prompt that she does herself. I find that so incredibly valuable. I have been working with like mindset exercises and stepping into my future self and envisioning my future like it's already here. And that journaling prompt just like sums it all up and makes it really cool to let it flow out of me when I'm journaling. So the journal prompt, as a reminder, was to start with now that. So just the words now that, and then lead into whatever it is that you're trying to manifest. So let's say it's now that I've got this beautiful home. It makes me feel safe, and I have a place to host my family and friends, and we can have beautiful parties and feel super loved and nurtured and cared for by each other in this space. You can use it with anything. Now that I have my beautiful boy or beautiful girl, if you're wanting to get pregnant, or now that I have abundant money that I can travel and do all these things with. And then make sure you mention the piece at the end as well of how that makes you feel, whatever it is that you're trying to create, especially if it's money. A lot of people will talk about money manifesting and they'll forget why they actually want the money. So do make sure you get into detail of what it is you want to do with the money and why you want it. To have those choices, to have those experiences or things, even like whatever, materialistic, do it. If you're loving it and you really desire it, go for it. And that's it from me, guys. If you want to jump on and follow me on Instagram, it's Release to Revive. I'll see you in there. And make sure you review this podcast as well. It lets others find it and spread the word. Love you guys. Enjoy your day. Breathe and be brave.